Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 30. Did I put the wrong number in there? 36. This is not
36.
episode 38.
Oh.
I put the wrong number in the title. Episode 36 of the Unchained Vodcast. Starting with derp, but moving on to the actual topic. Today, we're going to talk about user interface. They've done a number of live streams, and by they, of course, I mean City State Entertainment. For user interface stuff, there was a little bit of chatter on that in the forums that we hopefully won't go into.
Yeah.
But they had some live streams, everything showing some early user interface concept ideas, specifically for combat and for guild user interface. Now, none of this is definitive. None of this is necessarily even anything that's getting definitively into Beta 1, much less into the game. But there's some cool things that we're going to look at. I've got some pictures. We're going to put them up. We're going to talk about them and really get into it. So, let's just go right into that. I'm going to pull up our first picture, and we will look at things and discuss guild user interface. Alright, the screen should now be dominated by one of the two designs that they showed for the guild search and kind of creation type stuff. Just showing some of the themes and design elements that they're looking at. You know, the side panel with the different options, which seems to show that the guild screen is going to be a part of another UI, maybe your personal character stats or friends list or something, to have different sections for things. And then, of course, we have all the guild info to the right. There's also a second guild UI option that doesn't use the scroll, but instead uses these buttons. The first time I saw this, I really liked the button option here, and I still kind of like the buttons, but I don't like the header that comes with the buttons, whereas I kind of like both parts of the scroll a little bit, so I'm torn.
Well, they could mix up both, really.
Yeah, they could. Honestly, for this, they could use like the button part as the headers or something, and then use the scroll to follow under that. Though that might be a little cluttery. You know.
It looks like it's going to be really extensive. Also, with if you look at the top of the screen, with all the buttons. Which I like the fact that you will have a pretty extensive UI.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, there's a lot of options.
At least for those kind of things, not the HUD itself, but the UI for guild and stuff.
Yeah, for some things, there's definitely a harder time putting the UI together. I asked Mark Jacobs, not this week, but last week. I wasn't able to really get any UI answers at all this week. Last week, I at least got a vague response about the difficulty in the ability creator and setting up a user interface for that's intuitive. And he really just kind of more or less agreed that it's going to be very complicated to create something that represents all that data and all that information in a way that's intuitive to the user. But for guild UI, and we've got some people talking about combat. We're definitely going to get into the combat and the healing system a little bit in a minute. But for the guild UI, there's a few things on here. Overall, I would say I like this. It's a pretty clean look. It's just an initial design, but I think it looks pretty good. There's some good information on here. What I really wanted to see is what comments and suggestions people have for things with the guild UI that they're showing now that they either don't like or they would like to see changed. Obviously, this is an early design.
Yeah, of course.
So.
The one thing, as a former officer in many guilds, the one thing I want to see is the last login.
Yeah, and this
Which
is like the guild select screen, so we don't really have an example of what it looks like for actually managing your guild.
I like the idea that they have a guild browser, kinda.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about that is I think I would prefer to have the other realms in a different tab. Like where you could specifically look at TDD and Viking guilds. I kind of like the idea of being able to
have the other realms anyway.
Well, I kind of like the idea of being able to see them, just so I can look up who I'm playing against and go, oh, there's the guild leader for that guild. Yeah, I know that guy. I've seen him around. But I can't select them. I can't join them. So I don't think they should be in this same list. It should just be my realm's guild.
Yeah, you might have. It could be nice to have, instead of per realm, browse per realm, rather than having a full list of all the realms and all the guilds.
Yeah, the other issue I noticed on here is it lists the creator of the guild, and I think that should probably be swapped for guild leader.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that changes, and
the creation date is fine. It's Rahalden who said filter options. I like the idea, especially when you have guilds that want to filter for their recruitment, like opening only to certain archetypes, to certain classes.
Or some guilds might not be recruiting at all at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So you can filter the ones that are recruiting and the ones that are not. By time zone also. You could be filtering by time zone and things like that.
Yeah, there was originally I had an idea to have some way to filter them by guild purpose. You know, so a guild could designate itself as a crafting or a merchant guild. But really, I decided it would probably be far easier if they just let guilds give themselves a short description that you could click on and view. That would probably really eliminate a lot of UI issues that they might have to trying to enable those filters.
Yeah, just to note that, for example, a tooltip that if you hover over the name of the guild, gives a short description.
Yeah.
And as Rahalden said, also language, yes.
Yes, language would be a good thing to be able to filter by.
Yeah.
Another thing, a couple of features I thought of that could be present on here. Member count, how many members they have. Some people, that's a big issue for. They don't want a really huge guild. Or
yes and no. I think it could be an option that the guild leader would be able to toggle on and off if they want, rather than having it by default.
Perhaps. Personally, it's something I would like to be able to look up for other guilds, not just my own, but see how many members a guild has.
Maybe do it per realm. If you can look up the members, the member
of
count
your own realm only.
For guilds of your realm, but not for the other realms.
Yeah, I could see that. Having more restricted information for other realms, guilds, and stuff, I can see that. Another thing I thought of that would be kind of cool, in my opinion, would be an average membership period. So, like, on average, how long have their members been a member of that guild?
I'd swap that to the average online members. How many members they have on average online at the same time?
Well, you could do that, but it doesn't really serve the same purpose.
Yeah.
My thought on that is, if you're looking at guilds and some of them have members that leave, you know, they gain members and then they leave a lot, so they're good. They're pretty good at recruitment, but no one sticks around. You know, when you're looking for a guild, that might be a pretty good indicator that, well, that guild's probably crap. There's probably a reason people keep leaving. They let anybody in and no one sticks around. You know, that sort of thing. Let's see what we got here in chat. Yeah, ordering options, language. Relative strength of guild broken down by class.
Ooh, actually, yeah. Sacrex brings up a good point. Realm prestige.
Realm prestige would be good. Yeah, just so you can see kind of how active they've been. I don't know how I feel about broken down by class. A part of me kind of does agree that would be a cool thing to see when you're looking to join a guild. On the other hand, that would be hard to fit in a UI, and I could see, you know, I know you're not supposed to be able to see other realms info maybe, but you know, somebody could make another account, go over to the other realm, and then really get a lot of in-depth information into how the other guilds are operating.
That's why I said a lot of those infos, I'd like the guild leader to be able to toggle them on and off if he wants. Rather than just having them always visible.
Let's see. Founding date of good is founding date of good. Founding date of guild is definitely something that I'd like to see. I also actually I just thought about this. It would be nice to be able to click on a guild and see a guild history, which might include some significant achievements or acknowledgments from the realm. You know, realm renown rewards and stuff.
Basically, a guild page.
Yeah, and it could include alliance memberships, so you could see what alliances they belong to, when they joined them, when they left, things like that. They have that sort of stuff in Eve, and it's really nice to be able to look that kind of thing up. They have the same thing for characters too, which is also great. When someone's applying to your guild, and we kind of talked about that in a different stream. And I think we had JB or someone here for that too.
Well, JB is here actually.
Who was kind of agreeing with that it would be cool to have that sort of character history, because I know that was a big deal in Eve. You know, you would, before someone applied to your corp, you would look at their history and see who else they'd been a member of, how long until they left, all that kind of stuff. Did they stick around, or did they guild hop a bunch?
Yeah, pay some advertisement, Sacrex. Pay some advertisement to show up in the town journal.
To what?
So tie it to the server reset to show up in the newsletter, for example, the achievements of a guild.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
That, actually, I see what you're saying. Like an in-game advertisement, you could pay the realm to put that. That would be interesting.
Yeah. The thing is, for the guild browser, I don't want too many info. When you click on the guild, yes, you can have a guild page with a lot more extensive info if they want to display it. But I don't think that's something that's going to be extremely used.
Well, I do think
that's going to be used by people who join the game, I think, later on. Because at launch, a lot of people will already have their guild set or have a good idea of the guild they want to join. But later on in the life of the game, that's probably going to be used a lot more. But yeah, having that kind of tools is pretty interesting. A lot of games don't have that, and it's something that is done outside of the game, like on the forums, on the games forums, and having it in game is, I think, a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I do think that you can try to put too much info in the UI for sure.
Yeah.
There are some things about the guild's membership and stuff that I do think could possibly be useful and might be worth thinking about. Like I said, you know, I would personally be, before joining a guild, I would be really interested to know how long the average member stays a member of that guild. But then there are ways to mess with that too. You know, someone could create characters and invite them in and then never log them on and just leave them there to build up their average membership time or something. So, you know, I don't know. There are some interesting things that could maybe be added there. Does anybody have any particular other issues with Guild UI they wanted to mention?
I think Sacrex brings up a good point about outsourcing the UI to the mod squad that might come to by them. I think since there is an oversight from CSE, I don't think it's too much of a risk. The main risk is that the mod squad doesn't come up with a UI that is usable and efficient, and they will have to spend some development time correcting that and coming up with a UI themselves. That's I think probably the only big risk there is.
Well, I could be wrong in this, but I think from what we've seen, since they're already working on a UI themselves, I don't think they're relying on the mod squad to create a UI.
No,
so much as they're going to be relying on them to come up with new options, or maybe to tell them this is the kind of thing we want. Maybe you can help us with some of the layout options and things, and put some stuff together. Which again is possibly an issue if they put that out there and then they don't. Like I know the wiki is a thing. Not all of us have always been super good about updating the wiki. I haven't updated it in a while.
But it is not something as essential as the game's UI.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying, you know, when you're relying on volunteers for stuff like that, there can be some issues that come up.
Yes, of course,
for sure. But I think it's more about whether or not they deliver, more so than them, just completely shafting CSC so much. I
Yeah,
don't think
no, of course
that's
not.
as likely. All right, so we will move into. I'm pretty sure I'm almost done. I went through all my stuff here that I had. Actually, we didn't talk about the in-guild options as much as the creation UI and everything, and the browsing UI. And I did want to touch on that a little bit. Obviously, we don't have any visual examples of how the ranks and everything work. We've seen those before, but I didn't go and get them so that we could put them up, and it's been a long time anyway. But we do know that the guilds are going to have a very intricate ranking system where you can change the ranks of your membership. We've talked before about having interfaces for guild tax.
Yeah.
My main thing are member notes. Having officers be able to attach notes to members.
Yes.
And the the member activity, just being able to view when someone's last login was. At the minimum, just being able to view that would be
that's the minimum for
incredibly useful
from an officer perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, there is a lot of different issues that are kind of connected back to this topic.
But
I'm not sure what you mean by them trying to be clever, calling it a warband. I kind of agree with their philosophy that, if it's not going to be the default normal concept for a party, then changing the name for it does kind of make sense. I don't think it's a major issue that they would have to do. I'm still going to call it a party or a group no matter what. I'm not going to... I doubt I will ever be used to calling it a warband. It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, probably not.
Everybody getting group. I never even use party either. I say group.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm used to using.
Just like we're going to call it guild rather than orders.
Oh, yeah. Which is kind of funny because in our community we call them chapters. We don't even call them guilds. So
yeah.
Whatever. You're used to what you're used to.
Yeah, exactly. As long as it's consistent in the game, that's fine.
Yeah. As long as you can get into the game and know what people are talking about, I think it's fine. And that is possibly a concern for the use of the name Warband. New players might be confused by that, but they'll probably figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, WB will be the default in text. That's probably possible, yeah.
We're holding. My understanding, and I don't remember where this came from, but I remember someone talking about it, saying that it had come up as perhaps the change was because the parties are going to have different features and things. They're not necessarily going to operate exactly like a normal party would in most MMOs, and so use a different term to kind of distinguish that. And besides, Warband is honestly more thematically correct than a party is.
Yeah.
Party is kind of weird to call a group.
Yeah.
In any MMO, really.
And a group, we will have groups also, what we call the 8 men. That's the groups. We will have groups also. Warband is something completely different. So I'm okay with having a different name for that.
Yeah.
Well, the UI will for raids and for warbands and for campaigns, if they end up being in the game also. All those UIs are something critical that needs to be developed, because I know that back in EQ, being a raid leader and having the raid UI on all the time was really making this screen really cluttered, because you had 52 health bars or 50 health bars all on your screen at the same time. It's hard to see the game when you have that. And as Sakrix said, they said they want to make us play the game and not the UI. So having a UI that is complete and give us all the information we need without blocking the game completely is going to be quite a challenge, I think.
Okay, Sakrix, I honestly don't get what you're saying. You seem to be suggesting that they're not going to have a raid UI, and I see no reason why they wouldn't, and they certainly haven't said that there wouldn't be a raid grouping of any sort. Parties essentially are just 8-man groups, and they're calling them war bands. I mean, in other MMOs, you still have parties as 6 or 8 or 10-man groups, and they can still group together in raid configuration. You have a separate UI for raid groups, and I'm certainly assuming they're going to have that for this game. I certainly don't have confirmation about that, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, because I would agree if they didn't have a raid UI, that would be ridiculous and not very useful. So it would seem obvious that they've got to. In a game of this scale, there has to be some sort of raid UI to set up to, but we're not at that scale yet.
No.
And I see what someone else is saying about, calling war bands. I guess maybe raids were called war bands in another MMO. I've never called them that. So, I mean, groups, terminology swaps around.
Names names come and go in different games, so...
From game to game, it changes. I mean... I've always called them raid and group no matter what the game calls it. So.
And we will call them that anyway.
LFG, looking for group. That's all it is. Now, I do think we can get into combat UI because people keep flirting about it in the bars and the health bars and everything. So I'm going to pull those up, and we'll go ahead and start talking about that and looking at healing before everybody breaks into that. This first picture... Nope, that's the wrong one. This... wrong. All right. There we go. This first picture is the first bit of UI stuff that they showed. Just several different options that they were initially looking at. This is when they had the whole office in there reviewing their features, which was actually, I think, a really cool stream. This shows some of the different possibilities of different things they could do and what it might look like. Now, more recently, they had another stream where they were actually tweaking some more definitive, I think, things that they had kind of narrowed down to. These are 2 different pictures that I think meet some of the common themes for what they're looking at now. Again, these are preliminary designs. They're not, final by any means. But for some of the elements we have here, you have kind of a blood pool bauble that shows like a kind of Diablo style, shows your blood quantity. They go up and down and everything. There's a stamina bar across the top for your name. On the left hand side they have a portrait. The portrait is supposed to be kind of Doom style in that it'll move and kind of show like a visual representation of what you're doing. So for yourself, I'm assuming it's going to show that, and I'm assuming when you target an enemy it'll show the same thing, so the sword swing, whoosh, you can kind of see what's going on with some of that. Now the controversial part
it's the 6 bars.
The 6 health bars, which presumably stand for hands, fingers, knees and toes. Left arm, right arm, left leg, right leg, body, and head.
Head and torso, I think.
Yeah. So, well, that's what I meant by body. Yeah, head and torso. Yeah. So, already chat's going.
Yeah.
They did mention also that the ear system, your armor, of course, you can like enchant it and stuff, and runes might glow for different effects to kind of give help with visual representation of things that are happening. Like if you get hit with a fire spell and you're fire resistant, some runes might glow, and that'll tell people, oh, he's resistant to fire. But
I kind of like honestly the design of it. And contrary to what a lot of people say, I kind of like the 6 bars like that.
I'm not offended.
I know it's going to be a pain in the ass. We don't know yet how the healer vision is going to work and how the healing is going to work. But so far, I actually like the system. We'll see how practical it is in the game.
Yeah, I really like certain things. I like the little blood bauble thing because I like it in Diablo, so I like it in here too. I love the flag, the idea of having like a guild flag for yourself and for enemies. I love that. 2 things I did want to point out. First of all, I don't think they ever confirmed that this is what the UI will look like for your target.
No, yeah.
Like this is for your character. I don't think they ever said that this is what it'll look like when you target someone else. So the view might be a little bit different for that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would suspect they're gonna simplify it a bit for the target.
Yeah, I would hope so, because then you're gonna have like target someone. You have this big screen.
Yeah.
That might be a little crazy. Um, the 6 health bar thing, well, I'm not offended. I honestly don't think it'll be that big of a problem. Mainly, I'm confused about how health total fits into this, because you supposedly
Okay, so
can die from
apparently
losing all your
JB
health.
just,
So how does that?
sorry to cut you off. JB just said that it might just be mirrored to this one. Basically, yeah, just mirrored interface. So I don't know. It will depend on the size of it, if it's too obtrusive or not.
Okay, so it is for your target and for yourself. Okay,
Yeah.
that's new. New for me, I should say, because I don't catch
Yeah.
every stream, just most
You
of
can
them.
choose. So JB said that you can choose between the full size, a medium without the 3D portrait, or a
Mhm.
miniature version of it.
Yeah.
Which I understand that some
Yeah.
people like a full UI on the screen, seeing all the information. Some
Mhm.
people prefer a more minimalistic version of it.
Yeah, Zadrid feels like the body system is cool, and I will say I don't want to get too terribly much into the whole healing and body part
Yeah.
system, because we've kind of already talked about that and we don't have any real details. But for the UI purposes, we will some. But I just don't think it's going to work personally. The UI designs, though, are sick if they decide to keep the body part system. I feel like most people will just make their abilities to attack a specific body part. I agree. Probably most people are going to try to focus on a single body part, because that makes sense. If you could take out the leg and kill someone that way. But I think it kind of also might depend on how wounds work exactly.
Yes.
Since you
I
can kill
agree.
somebody with 3 wounds, that might be more feasible. If you can't kill someone by just hitting the leg, I mean, if that doesn't do enough damage to their health total, dropping all the health from a leg may not kill somebody. They just get crippled and move slow. So that doesn't
That or
necessarily...
just start to drain the blood pool.
Yeah, I don't know.
When you're at maximum damage and just die from that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. One thing about this that I wanted to ask is, what do you think this would mean? Let's assume healer vision is still a thing. We're assuming that. What do you think this would mean for healer vision? Like, does this leave anything for healer vision to do if you're targeting an enemy and you can see all 6 of their bars at that point, or you target allies and you can see all 6 of their bars?
No,
At that point, what does healer vision do? There are a few things I can think of that maybe wouldn't be represented on here that could be added for healer vision, namely wounds. Though if you're hitting someone and you can see their health pool going down, I think you would also want to know if they're wounded. So that's kind of a weird thing if you can't see that. Also, like buffs and debuffs, especially negative effects.
Yeah, I don't know where you would place those, because you're supposed to... That's the thing. Will we have a buff bar where we see all the buffs with the icons, or will it be showing on the 3D model in the UI as glowing effects and things like that are representative?
Okay, and JB's saying that they do. He does have a different idea in mind for a different version of this for raid grouping. So that's cool. Because I do kind of agree that might be problematic with a lot of people.
So
The
buffs
icons to the
are
right
going
of
to
the
be
bar.
icons on the right of that bar, which is good. I like to be able to see the buffs that are there. I like the fact that you can see them visually on the character, but you still need some efficiency, especially when you have a huge clutter around you and a huge battle around you. You need to be able to see them quickly.
Now, Glackhuns brings up a good point for healer vision to see the number of wounds per person in the field. Because I guess maybe these are one-on-one targeting, so you target someone, you can see this information. Healer vision may be a more mass quantity version of that. I have trouble seeing a way that works without cluttering the screen up. Because that is kind of an issue for me. Is if this shows buffs and it shows wounds and it shows health bars for every limb, at that point, what does healer vision do? Except crowd up your screen with screens for everybody on the field. I don't know. where's the distinction at that point?
Yeah.
Because I originally assumed that healer vision would show more of the limb type information and the wounds, and when you target someone, all you might see is their blood pool and their health, or maybe some status effects or something, and that there would be a pretty big difference in what those show. I don't have an answer because obviously I don't know.
Well, we don't really know how it's going to play out, but yeah, I don't know. I'm of two minds with the buffs. I like that it can be visible rapidly, knowing what buffs are on and not. I like the idea that it can be visible on the character, also on the 3D character that you have on the health bar.
Now, I do kind of agree with Glackens that healer vision could kind of be like a heat map of sorts, where it just kind of applies like a color overlay to characters. And, if someone's leg is badly wounded, it might be red instead of like the normal like blue color. And then if there's wounds, they might have a certain demarcation over them that would kind of give you something that you could readily see. I could see with a mass quantity of people, that sort of thing might be difficult to discern still, though. But it's not without potential. Let's see, JB. As far as I'm aware, the current concept healer vision would be more applicable as in-game effects, not just on the UI. I don't understand what that means.
I think we're kind of going off topic there for the healer vision. I think the design of it and the design of the UI for the healer vision, and for because I want to see that more as in-game and as in-world effects, like JB says,
like an ability or something that you're using.
Yeah, basically that's something you cast when you need to target rather than looking at the UI. Because if you see the health bars on your target, you still need to decide which person to target. So with the healer vision, might give you the rundown of who got the most wounds or who's the lowest in health in world, and then you can target that person and see the details on the UI rather than going by the UI first and then in world.
Yeah, it could be less of an all-colored type vision mode or something, and more of something that just highlights particularly damaged things. If someone's legs messed up, that part is kind of accented in some fashion with the healer vision and stuff. I do think it's kind of on topic. It does relate to the UI in a way, but if it is in-game effects, then yeah, it's not really entirely a UI element.
Yeah.
So, in that case, I guess we can move on to my next question, which is, as we've kind of already been discussing, but with all these bars and the stamina bar and the blood pool and the buffs on the right, is this too much information for combat?
Yes and no. Well, we know that it's going to be possible to minimize the UI. I think it's going to be very situational. In smaller scale battles, having those kind of infos might be the difference between winning a fight and losing it. In large scale battles, you don't need that much information. You can go by, for example, the minimal UI. It will be more of something of tides turning in a fight rather than 1 versus 1 or group versus group. It's going to be a general trend of going back and forth. So yes, healers will need more information. Maybe heavy fighters might need those kind of informations, but in general, I don't think that's going to be as critical in massive battles as it's going to be in skirmishes.
Yeah, I actually agree. I don't think this is too much information for combat, because really what you're looking at is you're going to be doing one of two things. You're either going to be one of three things. Either you're going to be looking at your own info, in which case you do want the detailed info, and you kind of know where you're at all times. You can quickly just look down and see where the bar is at and everything. Two, and you're only going to have certain things you're worrying about at any given time, and that is what's being hit. Two, you might be worried about, you might be just shooting people in general, and you're not really worried about what health level or something an individual is at. You're just taking long-range shots at somebody or something like that, and just trying to get them down. 3, you're actually specifically like fighting one-on-one with somebody and trying to kill that guy or that girl, and you've targeted them, so you then are you're not worried about other people's health bars. You're just worried about theirs and what the thing that you're hitting and trying to cripple or affect or whatever is. So I don't think that will be too much. I do think it's definitely more complicated than most games are for combat. But I don't think it'll necessarily be something that you can't track. I do think it is a little bit more complicated for healers, but I think that's where the healer vision can come into play, because if you accept the idea that this isn't too much for a single target, you're looking at one person and what you're doing to them or what's happening to them, then for a healer vision can be more about identifying who you need to target than it is about what needs healed. So you can just see people and go, okay, that person has a bunch of wounds and that person is crippled or something, and then healer vision is more about making your executive decision. Who do I target to get their frame on my screen?
It's kind
then
of,
you do that.
I would actually rename healer vision with triage.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is more something that for me would be much better applied to how the healer vision should be working, and then when you start your triage and you decide who you need to target first, then you go for the single target with all the health bars and seeing where you need to apply your healings first. But as a healer vision, I think it should be something more general and allowing you to target the person that needs it the most.
Yeah, I agree with Rhaegar on this, that I do actually kind of want large-scale combat to be difficult to heal, and I don't want it to be too difficult, and I don't want it to be impossible, but I do think it needs to be difficult to the point. I think the appropriate level of difficulty is where you need to have a healer in every group. You need to have a healer in every 8-man in order to effectively heal everyone. If you don't, you will not be able to track how many other people need heals and everything. And I think that's appropriate because that requires you to coordinate groups, and you can't just roll in as a giant Zerg and with a couple healers sprinkled here and there and think you're going to AoE your heals out. You have to have people designated with certain groups, moving with the groups, staying with them, and keeping their heals focused on those specific people. I think that's an appropriate way to go about it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think to sum up my idea, I'll go back to that, the triage. So that should be something that has an overlay in game rather than in the UI. This one would be like I think it was Glackens who said, like the heat map, seeing where are the people that need the most healing, and then when you target, you have the single target with all the details that you need to heal, like the wounds that you need to heal, like the effects they have on and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, I think they're kind of talking about healing now, and again, I don't want to get too much into the actual combat instead of the UI, but I still think running in and out is a good way to do healing if the damage and time to kill, if the damage isn't too terribly high and time to kill is thus longer. Not that healers going to be running in and out, but the people fighting are going to be having to move in and out to get healed sometimes, at least in more complicated battles. And yeah, if you've got mass quantities of people on your side, it's going to be harder to move in and out. So healers are going to have to either be closer to the combat so that they can get to you and heal you on the line, which puts them at risk, or you're going to have this really coordinated so that you can move around. People aren't standing behind you and blocking your way. Yeah, we'll have to see how it works out, really. And they've said, of course, that they're willing to change things. They're willing to adapt it if they put it out there and it's not fun. But you'll have to see. I don't want to go too much into the healer vision and stuff again if it's an in-game effect as opposed to being UI. And besides, we've done an entire episode on healer vision before, just making up stuff. Well, my next question was going to be about buffs and debuffs, but we now know how they're going to show those off. Yeah. So I won't even talk about that. So that really leaves crafting user interface, which I did my best to get some answers out of Mark about crafting UI Friday, and I got nothing, so I can't give you anything definitive or even halfway definitive, but we can talk about it anyway.
Well, for me, the crafting UI needs to be extensive.
Yeah.
At least the Vox one. Not the Libro Magus, whatever you pronounce it as. This one should be more of a bit like the ability crafting. Should be more of a kind of a book with just some abilities there. For the Vox UI, this should be extensive, where you have the history of your alloys. Shut up, Sacrex. Crafters are gonna make you armors. But yeah, you need to be able to have all your stats there, actual numbers. In this one, there are some UIs where you don't always need all the details, all the numbers. For the crafters, especially if you have, as Mark said yesterday, there will be some recipes. As in,
that
for
part
a sword,
threw me off a little bit, because I didn't think we were supposed to be having any recipes, and he's suddenly like, no, we're going to have recipes.
No,
what?
It's the way I understood it. It's not a recipe. It's you need a blueprint for a sword. The recipe is you need a hilt, you need a handle, and you need a blade.
Yeah, that's that was not what my question was about.
Yeah,
of course he didn't answer my question at all, so that's besides the point.
I know. But yeah, for crafting, I want to be able to have, especially a different UI for each step of the crafting. And one very important one is going to be the refining of it, where you want to be able to see the byproducts you created, your efficiency in terms of refining and of purifying, and then in the alloys, having all the percentage for the alloy, depending on what you create, and the history of it, because otherwise you're going to need to have your paper on the side and writing yourself how much you've put on of that material and that material to get that alloy, and then you need to write down all the properties for it, and I think that's something that needs to be in game and completely integrated.
Yeah, I do think that in your book or whatever you have for the crafting, there needs to be a way, kind of like ability crafting. There needs to be a way to record a combination that you put together and what it does, or what it did last time. So not necessarily like a way to label it and go, this is what this is. Not necessarily saying that it automatically creates that, but like when you create something and it produces an item. Even though there's going to be a little bit of randomness in there, you might have a way to tag that and log it in your book and go, this is the combination of things I did to make this. And then it logs it, so the next time you go to do it, you don't have to pull out a notepad and go, what did I do? I did this and this and this. Instead, it's in-game, and you can look at the user interface and go, okay, this is what I did last time. So I'm either going to do it again, or I'm going to play with it a little bit, and maybe we'll make something a little bit better. We'll see what happens.
And you need to be able to record also the settings of your Vox. I created that item with those settings for my Vox, and that you can record those and save those. I don't think it's a hand holding. It's I don't mind having my my notepad. I've done it for quests in EverQuest for years. I just think crafting is gonna need the numbers, and he's gonna need the tools to analyze. If you want to have it without just the recipes, like any other staple crafting that you see in games, that is boring and that is useless and that is exactly the contrary to what everything he wants to do, you need to be able to have professional crafters. As in, you might have those who just want to make items. Those can use their recipes, and I'll buy a hilt, I'll buy a handle, I'll buy the sword, and I'll make the sword. I'll buy the blade and I'll make the sword. And then you have those who really want to go deep into the alloys, really test all the different combinations, really want to see what the effects are of your different combinations, and really want to see also for the purification, the different settings of your Vox, what byproducts you get, what items, what percentage of purity you get, what this percentage of purity can do to the items you craft. All that needs to be, you need to be able to either have it integrated into the UI or at least having access to those numbers.
Yeah, I agree with Rhaegar about the blueprints they mentioned before. That is another way to do it without necessarily putting things in the UI. For some of this is to have it so you have a saved blueprint of a specific item. I don't remember if they said that blueprints would enable you to directly recreate an item, like exactly, or if there would still be a level of randomness to it. I assume there's still going to be some level of randomness to it, but at least having it be a thing that can be easily recreated, which is kind of my goal here. Is once you create something cool, you want to be able to remake that thing again.
Yes.
You don't want to have to try to completely reinvent the wheel every time. And while I've been playing games for a long time, and I am fully accustomed to keeping a gaming notebook with notes and things on there that, oh, this is what I did, and this is where I found something, or I play a fair number of puzzle games, and I'm like, this is where this puzzle and clue came about and stuff. In a game where crafting is this complicated, one, I think it would be nice to have some of that baked in, and two, we've gotten lazy as gamers.
Yes,
I think
definitely.
All gamers have gotten lazy compared to where we used to be. Like, if I go play old school games now, I get frustrated by the UI and what happens and everything, because I'm just like, ugh, this stuff is so easy to do now. This is terrible. All this old stuff was so hard. How did I play this game?
No, it's true. Like when I went back to EQ on Project 99, where you have no quest markers, you have no quest log, you have no map, you have no compass. All that. It's hard. I love the feeling of going back there, but it's really hard.
It's the sort of thing where you're like, this is awesome. I remember how great this used to be. And then after about 20 minutes, you're like, wow, this is really tedious. Oh, man, does this have to be that bad? Like, now, there was one other thing for crafting UI that I specifically want. I don't know that it'll be in-game, but it's a thing I totally want, which is I would like, in your book, that I can never remember the name of,
Libromagus.
Yeah, Libromagus, Magus, whatever. I would like to have, or your inventory somewhere. Either way, I don't care. Somewhere in the UI, I would like there to be a list of the base materials for crafting, not the refined ones and all that kind of stuff. That might be too much. But the basic materials that you can gather, and have a UI that shows on one page how many of those you have in your inventory and how many you have in storage. So that when you're crafting and gathering and you know that you need X amount of something or other things, you can go and get them and see totals of how many things you're carrying with you. It's one of those things that I think gets heavily modded into games all the time, and no game ever adds it, or not too many games add it. And every game that doesn't add it, a modder makes a mod for it to put it in the game so that you can have more convenient inventory management. And it bugs me that I'm like, every game this gets modded in there, and why do games still exclude it from there? Because someone's just going to mod it and add it in there, so you might as well put it in the game at this point, because you know a bunch of people are going to want it. See, just cut the middleman out. Make the mod squad do it before game launches, and we'll have it as an option. Let's see, I'm a little outdated on chat.
They were mostly talking about the UI, the old school UIs.
Yeah. Now, I will say for blueprints, I do agree that even if you have a blueprint for crafting, it shouldn't guarantee success. You know, you should still have the same, or maybe reduced, but still have some levels of risks and opportunities for even better product.
The way I understood it, and the way, as far as I remember, MG said, is that the blueprint will allow you to craft faster with less resources. It doesn't guarantee you success.
Yeah.
It has less risk and is more efficient, which is understandable. But to have the blueprint, you will need to either buy it or make the item first. So there will be a market for blueprints. We don't know how efficient and how feasible it's going to be. But having a blueprint doesn't guarantee you 100% success and an instant crafting.
Now they did. I think he did mention. I mean, he didn't guarantee, but I thought he did suggest that they may have some sort of a rudimentary UI for crafting for Beta 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be a UI for Beta 1. It's still going to be /commands for the actual crafting for the moment, but there will be a base UI.
I thought he was implying that there wasn't a guarantee, but they had progressed a UI to a point where there may be one. Yeah, there we go. Me Huge is actually building a UI for crafting right now. Craft without /commands. I admit testing using the /commands, it's not hard, but it's so hard. Like every time I go in there, I'm like, I wanna be a good duck and do my thing and do that, and I'm just like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, no, it gets old fast.
Anyway, I did have one last question for people, since we seem to have kind of gone over crafting UI, which is, what is your greatest concern for the game's user interface? What are you really most worried about with it?
The actual HUD, so the actual in-game UI, not the different pages of your inventory, of the crafting and everything, but the UI where you have your health bar, your skill bars and everything being too cluttered.
That's actually the exact same issue I have. I'm not concerned with having too much information overload. I'm not really concerned about that. I'm concerned with too much of my screen being taken up by junk. And not to say that UI is all junk, but, you know, just too many pictures, too many icons, too much stuff. It's every game I tend to have a lot of UI stuff, and I don't like it. I'm not a minimalist. I don't narrow my UI down to nothing. I still want my health bars. I still want my information and everything. I want my chat screen. I keep all that stuff up. I just don't want it to be too much. And that's why when you target someone and we're going to see all their health bars and all that kind of stuff, I start worrying because I'm like, oh, God, is that going to take up like a quarter of my screen over here? Like, it's got mine down here, and then it's got this big one up here. At that point, almost a half my screen is taken up by health bars, and chat. And then if I'm in a raid, oh god, we got raid screen over here, and then I'm like, where am I? I'll be playing the game in this little window. Can I get an app for my phone and port my raid screen over here?
Exactly.
I'll just turn my phone on and plug it in and leave it here, so I have another screen to do raid UI.
I don't see why they wouldn't. Sacrex is worried about not having a raid UI. I don't see why they wouldn't have one. I just don't want one that is in the middle of my screen.
That would be crazy, yeah.
Pulling up a raid UI, having your group UI, your group health bars on your screen at all times, I don't have a problem with that. If you can pull up a raid UI where you have all the information you need, especially for raid leaders and squad leaders or warband leaders, I'm okay with that, but not having it all the time on the screen. I'm fine with that.
It is difficult, I think, to make a good, like, even a normal group UI that doesn't take up tons of your screen. That seems like something that would be very difficult to do. You can totally have your group use UIs on an external app or even website, by the way. Awesome! I'm going to have my phone just sitting here with that info on it. And then someone's going to text me in the middle of a battle, and I'm like, no! Don't pop up. Oh, God. Now you ruined it. Somebody's got to make an app for me, man. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm having hard enough time getting people to make me Discord bots.
Get the mod squad to do that.
That's what the mod squad's for. But I agree. You want the UI information. I mean, my guild's going to want to have raid UI information on screen in some fashion. So I do agree you need a raid UI. It's crazy to me to think of possibility that there wouldn't even be one. I don't see why there wouldn't.
Yeah.
That would be kind of wonky. I can't even think of what to say about that. Just not having a raid UI, that would be kind of crazy.
Yeah. No.
Unfortunately, it is one of those things that's very difficult about how to do that effectively without throwing up your entire screen to health bars and everything, which is something I definitely don't want, especially when you're talking about people with 6 health bars. But like JB mentioned, there are ideas for smaller ones for groups and raids and everything, and there's no reason they couldn't have like little indicators for people with like a percentage health or something, and then that's all it shows you is like a single health bar for somebody, and so you can see it and then click on them to get the full view and all that kind of stuff. I don't think a UI is going to determine whether or not you have clicks in your guild.
Yeah, exactly.
I run a guild, and we have a very strong anti-click rule in general. we very rarely ever had any issues with clicks in general anyway in our community, but I think whether or not you have clicks in your guild comes from before you get into the game together than it does, and how you interact over voice and how you interact in your guild more so than it does any UI or combat issues.
And I'm sorry, but segregation in a raid is actually a good thing, because if you have 82 or more people talking at the same time, that's just bullshit. That's just crazy, and you got nothing organized. I'd rather have some sort of segregation during the raid, but a philosophy in your guild that doesn't encourage clicks. War bands is not going to create clicks. It's just going to facilitate communication and things like that. I don't see how having war bands or having a raid UI that has war bands or not is going to create segregation or clicks.
No, I mean that's pretty much how we've always run it. I mean, you run people into groups, you separate them within voice in the groups, and when they're doing raids and everything, they're in their focus groups doing whatever their group is doing, and usually having focused purposes. And when you're not in the group, when you're not in the raid, because you're not going to be raiding 24/7, when you're not in the raid, you're together in channels talking and doing crafting and gathering and stuff and communicating with each other. I think that's the important part, is communicating outside of the raid environment. People, I don't know anybody that, even the most hardcore players, that raid 24/7. Not that's in our community anyway. We tend to be older.
Yeah.
I haven't had many people I've known that raid 24/7 who are not in high school anymore. So I'm sure there certainly are people that can do that, but I don't know anyone who can do that anymore. So if people aren't communicating outside of the raids and everything, then yeah, that's probably is going to cause a problem, because they need to be hanging out and getting to know each other and all that kind of good stuff. Either way, we're way off UI at this point.
Well, no, not exactly, because Sacrex is still talking about the raid UI, and I don't see why. I don't know. 24 men is not exactly a line run for large scale. They're supposed to have huge large scale battles. If you go 24 is it's a raid. It's a PvE raid. Well, it's a modern days PvE raid, because that was much higher than that before that. But for large-scale battles, if you want to have, they did talk about the campaigns. Campaigns are going to be huge. You need to have a UI for that also. So I don't see why you would need a fixed number for a UI.
I actually do think you would. In that you need a max. You need a maximum number of people to keep your UI from taking up your entire screen.
A second raid, then you can make a second raid.
Exactly. You just make up a second raid.
24 for me, 3 groups is not a raid UI. It's not a raid 3 groups.
Yeah, I could
it's
see.
Warband. It's a warband.
Well, I could see having it max 4 or 5 groups within a raid UI.
I
Just
would go
because
higher than that.
Well, just because I have a hard time seeing how you can fit more than 5 bars of group members on a single screen without starting to really dominate the screen and give an overload of UI and making it difficult to see what other people are doing. Also, I don't think there's going to be that many people playing the game. Like, okay, we have our raid. I don't think raids are going to be alliance screens, so someone else has got their own raid. We've got our raid. You're going to have different groups doing different things, of course. So if you have 5 groups, you've got a 40-man raid running. Are you going to really have more than 40 people in game doing this on the same battlefield at the same time? Possibly. But only the biggest guilds are ever going to really do that, and there's no reason they can't do 2 raids and still coordinate pretty okay. Most of us do our coordination in voice anyway.
Yeah.
So.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I don't want to the full 1,000 men raid UI campaign UI. We don't need that. Although we will need, if the campaigns are in, we will need a UI for that. I don't know what information you will need on that. I would probably want it to be more like a map, like a tactical map, rather than having. In a campaign, you don't need the UI, the health bars of the 500 people that are in your campaign.
Yeah.
You don't need that, but you need information on the campaign, on the locations of your different groups, on things like that.
I would agree with that. I'm kind of hoping that alliances will have some sort of shared information like that. So if you're in the same alliance, and if you're in the same, maybe you can also show groups within your guild, since they are technically in the same alliance, and you could see some of these group indicators on the map or something. I think that would be an interesting way to manage that. Here, people think campaigns are. I don't know. You can correct us. Yeah, I don't know. And we're definitely not going to get too much into that because that's not really UI information.
I think the different size of groups and of player groups, not group the 8 men, the different size of player groups will need their own UIs at different scales.
Yeah.
And with different type of information. A group UI might not need the same information as the warband UI, as a raid UI, as a campaign UI, as a guild UI. All that will need different informations at the different times also. And I think having them, the good thing is that the code for all that will be accessible. So it falls on CSC to implement a lot of the basics, but after that, it will be the player's responsibility, the guild's responsibility, to come up with UIs, UI elements that are gonna fit their needs.
Yep, and I think that's a pretty good point to end off on. So I do want to thank everybody for hanging out and catching us live. If you didn't catch us live, catching us on video. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. That's pretty much it. This is our last episode for this season. We will be taking a 1 to 2 month break, depending on what sort of information comes out. Of course, we will pop back up and do another episode if like a big beta 1 announcement happens at some point, and a bunch of new information's put out for that. We'll do an episode just for that. But otherwise, we're going to take our usual 1 to 2 month break to plan out next season's episodes and all that kind of stuff, and then we will come back. Hopefully at that point it will be close to beta 1 time, and we will be able to start talking about that. Till then, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you later.
Thank you for watching.